Okay, hello, welcome back to the show. We are doing a another little art walkthrough. This is one that this is a painting we've seen already. So this is the Esperanza, the ship sailing towards the Tower of Death.
Yeah, sailing towards Tower of Death. When I first had this in mind, I was having just a regular sea scene, I was looking up old paintings that were model box covers for like the HMS Bounty and things like that. And I came across a painting, actually it was a photograph of a reproduction sailing ship, and it had this really cool evening sky, with the orange and the purples, and I thought, wow, that's cool. So I had to redraw the ship to make it look like the Esperanza. It was similar, but the back end is completely different. The only thing is the same are basically some of the masts. And then I had to throw in the Tower of Death. And you can see, once we get going there, that it's mostly a dark covered colored ship, which is black, and then it's reflected in the water. So I painted the tower just with using the same rules, so it would look like it's part of the scene there.
So what did you do with the sky there? Because that didn't look like a brush you were using.
I was using a sponge, and so what I did is I got the paper really wet, and then took a sponge and threw that on there, and it gives it as kind of a misty look.
Yeah.
And then I'll use a brush a little bit later on to go back in and do some other sky treatment, and of course throw in the sun and the highlights on the clouds and things.
And then I like that you keep to keep the color going through the whole thing, so you used the same color on the sky and the water.
Yes. And that was from the photograph, because the water is reflective of the sky. And so if you just use those same rules, it doesn't matter what colors you use, it'll give you the same look. I could have used, green in there too, and it would have done the same thing.
So what's the trick to getting the water to look different than the tower there?
So I used the same rules as the photograph. You could see there's a little piece of that photograph sticking on the left-hand side for my reference. And so I just I saw the reflection of the ship and I just duplicated that technique for the tower, which of course didn't exist. That's just that in my head. And then here I'm using a ruler to paint some of the ship stuff. And if you tilt that ruler up at an angle and use a real thin brush, you can just run it on the edge of that ruler, and it'll give you straight lines with a brush. And you can do it real fast.
Gosh, because it looks so detailed, the ship.
It is really detailed. It took a while to do. And here again, if you notice, I painted the lights inside the ship first, and then I'll go through and then paint the black around it, and then touch up the lights a little bit towards the end. And that's because if I painted the whole thing black, I wouldn't be able to see where those lights were, and I would lose the form of the ship.
And you wouldn't be able. It would be much more difficult to go through and put the light into those little holes there.
Yeah, it would be. So even if I accidentally painted out some or lost a little, I can go in and paint it in later because I know where they are. So.
Yeah, all that rigging looks just crazy to try to work on.
It is crazy. Yeah, this one was a little complicated, so it took a little bit more time than I thought. And again, most of the ship was dark. In the back, most of the ship is black, but there's just a little bit on the side there, and so you paint it in, but then you have to darken it up using my purples and things like that. So,
what? How do you make your reference photo on the left?
So what I did is I found an actual photograph, and then I photoshopped in some elements of other ships of kind of how I wanted the Esperanza to look. So that's a mix of about 4 different photographs. And then, of course, the tower, I had just sketched it in, and you can see it's just drawn in by hand.
That's a drawing.
That's a drawing. And I just photoshopped that in, and I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to paint the tower black. And so,
because it looks like an iceberg, or so. I thought it was maybe like a piece of Antarctica or something when I was looking at it on the left there.
Well, that's how it started. Yeah, and that was from a drawing I did literally on a sketch piece of paper at that German beer house that we go to every once in a while.
Yeah.
I was there with some of my art students. We were all sitting around drawing, and I just came up with this idea and scribbled it. And so then I went home, I scanned it in, and I just used that actual drawing and just blew it up. I stretched it a little bit, too, to make it a little taller than I had originally had from that drawing.
Yeah.
So here we got the water is mostly done, and I'm getting ready to paint some detailing on the back of the ship, and the and on the tower too. So I'll use like a very dark blue-gray.
And is the tower done, or you said you're going to go through with the highlights?
Yeah, I'll go through and put some highlights and things on it, because there has to be, when I put the sun in, there has to be some kind of reflected elements there. And so I'm touching up the lights, and I'm putting that blue-gray on the back there just to give it a little modeling.
Yeah.
Even though on the actual photograph it was completely black. I thought, it's a painting. Need to show something there. I have to actually put in some work.
Yeah, because this isn't any work. This is easy.
Yeah.
This is 2 hours of work sped up to 6.5 minutes. But
And here I'll just throw just a little bit of detail on that tower. Not a lot, just enough to see that it's three-dimensional.
Yeah.
And then here's reflected light on the sea.
And the sky's not done yet.
The sky's not done yet, yeah. That's got a little more to go. We got to put the sun in, and then...
Man, I'd be worried about, like, painting over the rigging when I was, like, doing the sky.
That sometimes it works because the sun will shine through and make things look skinnier. And so there's a technique in putting light through objects like that to make it look thinner, like that light is really shining through. So if you accidentally paint over something like that, it's not that big of a deal. It actually makes it look more realistic, believe it or not. Yeah, and there we're putting the sun in, and that's a yellow mixed with a lot of white to make that yellow really stand out.
Oh, and then that dark streak in the middle was always going to be a cloud.
Yes. Well, actually, that dark streak was a little bit of a mistake, but then when I saw it, I went, wait a second, I'll put that as a cloud, and it worked.
So it's like a living thing when you're making one of these.
Yeah, yeah. Especially if you're using a lot of water for that background. You blend it, and that water can do things that maybe you're not too happy with, so you have to fix it.
Yeah.
Or you see, now I can highlight the bottom of that cloud, and it gives us a cool look that was never in the original photograph. So, so if I get accused of, oh, you just copied a photograph. No, actually I didn't. I put a lot into that. It's a lot different to that photograph. Photograph was reference.
Yes. And it looks like we're finishing it up. Just last touches on the sky.
Yeah, we're just highlighting that sky, and we're almost done here.
Awesome. All right, and then there it is. The Esperanza is like the birds. You got to get the birds in there.
Here we go.
And then the Esperanza sailing towards the Tower of Death.
There we have it.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.